The training hall at Coronado was alive with noise, boots slamming against rubber mats, sharp commands echoing off steel walls, and the low hum of anticipation that always clung to Navy SEAL drills. Sweat hung heavy in the air, mixed with the faint smell of disinfectant and salt water that never quite left the compound. This was a place where weakness was exposed quickly and mercilessly. The circle of trainees tightened without anyone giving the order. At the center stood a woman most of them barely knew. Her name, according to the clipboard passed around earlier, was Evelyn Cross, listed as a temporary attaché assigned to observe advanced close combat drills. No rank visible, no unit patch, just plain fatigues, scuffed boots, and a posture that was different, calm, almost detached. That calm made them uneasy. So this is the observer. One of the trainees muttered loud enough to be heard. A few snickers followed. Another leaned toward his buddy. She looks like she wandered in from supply. Evelyn said nothing. Her eyes moved slowly across the room, not tracking faces but exits, angles, distances. Years of habit, the kind that never really faded. The lead instructor, a broad-shouldered chief petty officer with a reputation for being brutal but fair, stepped forward. "All right," he barked. "Hand-to-hand evaluation drill. You'll rotate partners. Keep it controlled." A pause. Then, almost as an afterthought, he added, "She'll participate." That was all it took. Laughter broke out, sharp and immediate. "Sir, with respect," one trainee said, grinning, "are we supposed to go easy?" Another chimed in, "Yeah, I don't want paperwork for breaking the observer." The chief didn't smile. "You'll follow the drill. Pair up." Evelyn was assigned last, always last. She stepped onto the mat as the others finished stretching, cracking knuckles, rolling shoulders. They were young, early 20s mostly, fresh from the furnace of selection, muscles tight with confidence and ego. They had been told repeatedly that they were elite, and they believed it. Her first partner was a tall trainee named Rourke. He bounced lightly on his feet, smirk fixed in place. "You sure you're good with this?" he asked, lowering his voice as if pretending concern. "I can take it easy." Evelyn met his eyes briefly. Her expression didn't change. "Run the drill," she said quietly. That only fueled the mockery. They circled each other. The whistle blew. Rourke lunged, not full force, but enough to assert dominance. Evelyn shifted just enough to avoid the strike, her movement efficient, minimal. Some of the trainees noticed, most didn't. "Hey," she dodged. Someone joked. Rourke pressed harder now, irritation flashing across his face. He reached again, faster. Evelyn blocked, redirected, stepped away. Still controlled, still restrained, the laughter softened, replaced by murmurs. What's she doing? Is she trained or just lucky? Rourke finally shoved her, harder than the drill called for. Evelyn stumbled back a half step, boots scraping the mat. For a split second, something dangerous flickered behind her eyes' old reflexes, buried discipline straining against restraint. She steadied herself. "I thought this was a SEAL facility," Rourke said loudly. "Not a daycare." That crossed a line. A few trainees laughed. Others shifted uncomfortably. The chief frowned but didn't stop it. Not yet. This place tested more than muscle. It tested restraint, pride, judgment. Evelyn lowered her gaze, breathing slow and measured. She could feel the room now, not just watching her, but weighing her, judging. Good, she thought. Let them. As Rourke advanced again, his hand snagged her sleeve. Fabric tore with a sharp rip. The sound cut through the room. Evelyn froze, not from fear, but from calculation. She looked down at her exposed upper arm, just for a moment, before pulling the fabric back into place. None of them noticed what flashed beneath the torn sleeve. Not yet, but the air had changed. The laughter died completely. Rourke hesitated, suddenly unsure why. The chief took a step forward, eyes narrowing. Somewhere at the edge of the room, a senior officer who had just entered the facility slowed his stride, gaze locked on the mat. The drill hadn't been stopped, but something far more dangerous than mockery had just begun. And Evelyn Cross stood quietly at its center, surrounded by men who had no idea who they were really standing against. The mat felt colder now, not physically. Nothing in the training hall had changed, but the atmosphere had tightened like a breath held too long. The kind of silence that follows a mistake you don't yet realize you've made. Rourke rolled his shoulders, trying to laugh it off. "Relax," he said, though his voice had lost its edge. "Just a drill." Evelyn Cross didn't respond. She adjusted her stance, feet settling into a balanced, grounded position that no civilian observer should have known instinctively. A few of the more experienced trainees noticed and exchanged glances. The chief's voice cut through the air. "Reset. Continue." The whistle blew again. This time, Rourke came in faster. Pride demanded it. His hands shot forward in a textbook grab, meant to control her arms and force her to the mat. He expected resistance, maybe panic. What he got was emptiness. Evelyn slipped inside his reach, pivoting with a smoothness that defied explanation. Her elbow rose, stopping just short of his jaw. She held it there, a hair's breadth away, eyes locked on his. She could have ended it. Instead, she stepped back. The trainees murmured now louder. That was clean. Where'd she learn that? Did you see her footwork? Rourke's face flushed. He attacked again, this time ignoring the chief's emphasis on control. His grip caught her sleeve once more. Fabric ripped farther, exposing more of her arm. This time, no one missed it. Black ink curved across her skin, sharp lines, deliberate, unmistakable. A viper coiled around a dagger, its fangs bared. The design wasn't decorative, it was precise, old, faded just enough to suggest years of wear, not weeks. The room went dead silent. Every SEAL in that hall knew the legends, even if most had never seen the symbol in real life. It wasn't something you earned through training blocks or qualification pins. It wasn't even officially acknowledged. The Black Viper, a mark whispered about in classified briefings and shut down conversations. Operators who worked so far in the shadows their missions never made it into history books. Ghosts, problem solvers, the kind of warriors commanders denied existed until they needed them. Rourke froze, his hand still gripping her torn sleeve. "What is that?" someone whispered. Evelyn didn't pull away. She didn't cover it this time. She exhaled slowly. The chief's boots hit the mat as he stepped forward, eyes locked on the tattoo. His face had gone pale beneath years of sun and salt. "That's not," one trainee started. "Shut up," another hissed. Rourke finally released her, stumbling back as if burned. "That's not real," he said, voice cracking. "That's just ink." Evelyn lifted her gaze to him, calm and steady. "Run the drill," she repeated. The chief opened his mouth, then closed it again. His authority suddenly felt insufficient. He wasn't the highest rank in the room anymore. At the far end of the hall, the senior officer who had entered moments earlier stopped completely. Colonel Hayes, a veteran of decades in naval special warfare, Hayes had seen the evolution of the teams, from brutal beginnings to surgical precision. He'd buried friends whose names never left classified files. And he knew that symbol. His heart skipped. "Clear the mat," he said quietly. No one moved. He raised his voice. "I said clear the mat." The trainees scrambled back, boots shuffling, eyes wide. Evelyn remained where she was, standing alone at the center, her torn sleeve hanging loose, the Black Viper mark fully visible now. Hayes approached slowly, each step deliberate. His eyes never left the tattoo. "How long have you been wearing that?" he asked. Evelyn met his gaze. "Long enough, sir." Something in her tone, respect without submission, confirmed what his instincts already screamed. He swallowed. Who cleared you for this facility? She hesitated. Just a fraction of a second. You didn't, she said, and that's the point. The chief looked between them, confused, unsettled. Sir, should I? Not yet. Hayes interrupted. He turned back to Evelyn. You could have broken him. Yes, sir. You chose not to. I was observing. A muscle jumped in Hayes' jaw. He looked around the room at the trainees who had laughed, mocked, underestimated. Young men who thought they understood what elite meant. They didn't, not yet. Hayes took a breath, the weight of memory pressing down on him. The Black Viper didn't appear by accident. It appeared when someone had been through hell and come back sharper. And now one of them stood in the middle of his training hall, unannounced, unrecognized, mocked. His voice cut through the silence like a blade. Stop the drill. Every man froze, because in that moment they all realized the same terrifying truth. They hadn't been testing her. She had been testing them. The words didn't echo. They crushed the room. Stop the drill. Colonel Hayes' voice carried the weight of decades, of commands given in darkness, of lives balanced on a single decision. The sound cut through muscle, memory, and ego alike. Every seal in the hall snapped to stillness as if frozen by instinct alone. No one questioned it. No one moved. Evelyn Cross stood at the center of the mat, breathing steady, her torn sleeve hanging loose. The Black Viper mark rested in plain sight now, no longer hidden, no longer deniable. She didn't look surprised. If anything, she looked relieved, as if a burden she'd carried silently had finally been acknowledged. Hayes stepped fully onto the mat. The chief instinctively straightened. Sir, at ease, chief. Hayes said without looking at him. His eyes never left Evelyn. The colonel stopped an arm's length away, close enough to see the scars now. Thin white lines near her wrist, faint burns along her forearm. Not the kind that came from training accidents. The kind that came from work no one bragged about. How many rotations? Hayes asked her. Evelyn blinked once, two completed, third interrupted. Hayes nodded slowly. You showed restraint? Yes, sir. That answer did something to the room. A few trainees shifted their weight, suddenly aware of how thin the line was between discipline and disgrace. Hayes turned his head slightly. Rourke, the trainee, stiffened. Sir, you ignored control parameters. Yes, sir. You escalated after being warned. Rourke swallowed. Yes, sir. Hayes studied him, not with anger, but disappointment. Do you know who you were training against? No, sir. That's correct. Hayes said, you didn't, and that's the lesson. He faced the group now, his presence filling the hall. You laughed. He continued. You assumed. You measured capability by appearance, by rank tabs, by what made sense to you. His gaze swept the room, landing on faces that had lost all color. In this profession, those assumptions get people killed. Silence. Evelyn shifted her stance, subtly covering the exposed tattoo again. Hayes noticed, and raised a hand. Leave it, he said gently. She hesitated, then nodded. Hayes turned back to the chief. Do you know what that symbol represents? The chief swallowed hard. I've heard stories, sir. Stories, Hayes repeated. Good, because those stories were written by people who never came home. A sharp breath rippled through the trainees. That mark isn't awarded. Hayes continued. It isn't documented. It appears when someone is trusted with missions so sensitive that their success is erased along with their name. He looked back at Evelyn. You were active when? Classified, she replied. A faint, grim smile touched his lips. Of course you were. Hayes turned sharply to the group. You don't see heroes because heroes don't announce themselves. The most dangerous people you will ever meet often look unremarkable. That's by design. Rourke stared at the mat, shame etched across his face. Hayes' tone softened, but only slightly. Cross, yes, sir. Why are you here? She took a breath. This was the question she'd known was coming. Assessment, she said. Command wanted to know if the next generation could recognize threat, respect discipline, and maintain control under uncertainty. A few heads snapped up. Hayes exhaled slowly through his nose. "And your verdict?" Evelyn looked around the room, not accusing, not smug, just honest. "They're strong," she said, "skilled, motivated." She paused, but they're loud. The words hit harder than any reprimand. Hayes nodded. "That tracks." He turned to the chief, resumed drills, but with a change. "Yes, sir. Cross will rotate through the rest of the class." A murmur rippled through the room. Hayes raised a hand. Silence returned instantly. "She will not dominate. She will not teach. She will observe and respond as necessary." He looked at Evelyn again. "Your rules?" She inclined her head. "Understood." As Hayes stepped back off the mat, he paused. "One more thing." Evelyn met his eyes. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for not reminding them the hard way." Something passed between them. Recognition, respect, shared ghosts. Hayes turned and addressed the trainees one final time. "Remember this moment, not because you were embarrassed, but because you were alive to learn from it." He glanced once more at the black viper mark. Some lessons don't come with second chances. The whistle blew again. But this time no one laughed, and every man in that hall knew the drill had already changed them, because the woman they mocked had just shown them what true silence, true discipline, and true lethality really looked like.